Another week, another top 4 matchup. This time coming in Happy Valley as number 4 Ohio State takes on number 3 Penn State in what is by far the game of the week in Week 10. A game that has massive, absolutely massive college football playoff implications. And we do expect another instant classic between the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions, but the million-dollar question is, will this be the year that Penn State finally breaks through and wins this game? That's what we're here to answer today. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad you could join us for another top 4 matchup this season. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our exclusive expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years. We are currently beating out over 80% of the national handicappers this season on an 11-4-1 run in our best bets for college football, hitting well over 65% in our NFL best bet section. So if you want to win big with us, if you want to take advantage of these expert picks for one of the lowest prices in the country, guaranteed best customer service in the business for a full year-long subscription, full 365 days, all those things other handicappers are not offering you. We can guarantee you that. If you want all that, check it out over on thegridironexpert.com. Sign up today and become a member of our GE Nation because it's never too late to sign up. So, Penn State, Ohio State. Look, this has always been a really, really good game, right? It's so interesting, the series history over about the last 7 or 8 years. You know, Penn State won this game in Happy Valley back in 2016, and that was the game that we always say put Penn State back on the map. That was the game that put them back on the national stage, and they've stayed there year after year after year, a perennial Big Ten title contender, a perennial playoff contender, even though they have never made the college football playoff. Because after they won that game in 2016, Penn State has failed to beat Ohio State since then. They've lost 7 straight games to the Buckeyes. 7 straight games to Ohio State they have lost, but they've all come by an average of 8 points per game. 2 of those losses coming by just 1 point. 3 of those losses by 1 possession, and none of those losses by more than 13 points. So Penn State has played Ohio State very, very close. We've seen some great games over the last 7 or 8 years, but the Nittany Lions have been unable to get over the hump, and that's what's been so frustrating. This is now the 4th meeting between these two teams as top 10 teams. 4th time in the last 7 years they've met as top 10 teams, and we're expecting another very close 1-possession game, kind of like we had last year. It wasn't an instant classic by any means, but it was a close win for Ohio State, winning just 20-12 in Columbus. We start on the offensive side of the ball. We'll start with the road team in Ohio State. They've got a good offense, right? Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. Sometimes you kind of overlook that, but they've got a good offense. They're 9th overall, averaging over 470 yards per game, over 283 passing yards per game, over 188 rushing yards per game. They're putting up very good numbers, and we know they've got tons of talent. They practically went out and just bought all of their talent. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the age of college football that we're living in. They brought in Will Howard from Kansas State. He's thrown for nearly 1,800 yards, 17 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions this year, playing very good ball. They've got Quinshon Judkins coming in from Ole Miss, who's rushed over 500 yards and is averaging 6.4 yards per carry. They've got 2 phenomenal wide receivers in Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Smith over 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. Egbuka over 540 yards and 6 touchdowns. Those 2 players combining for 14 of the 17 touchdowns that Will Howard has thrown this year. 14 of Howard's touchdowns have gone to either Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka, arguably the top wide receiver duo in the entire country. But the million-dollar question is, which offense is going to show up for Ohio State? We know they've put up very good offensive numbers. Granted, they really haven't played anybody this season with the exception of Oregon. Or is it going to be the team that did put up a lot of yards against Oregon, only lost by 1 point? Is it going to be the team that's been able to put up 400 yards in multiple other games? Is it going to be the team that only mustered, 285 yards and 21 points at home last week against Nebraska, a game where the Buckeyes were favored by 25 points? Is it going to be the team that, yes, while they did beat Iowa and Michigan State and all these other teams by wide margins, is it going to be the team that started very slow in those games? We're very, very pitiful first quarters. You don't really know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis from Ohio State's offense. Can they start strong? Can they start fast in this hostile of an environment, a place they really really have not been scared of playing in over the last 7-8 years. Can they start strong? Can they be explosive? Can they find a way to create very big plays against this Penn State defense? They were unable to do so at home against Nebraska last week, and Penn State certainly a lot better than Nebraska. So very interesting concept here, something to monitor for Ohio State. The talent is there. We know what they're capable of. It's just a matter of if they show up and execute. Penn State, they've got bigger questions on the offensive side of the ball because, their starting quarterback, Drew Aller, may not be playing in this game. James Franklin calling it a more than likely game time decision on Saturday on whether or not Drew Aller is going to play on Saturday morning. He's thrown for over 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions, averaging over 266 passing yards per game, leading an offense that's averaging over 463 yards per game. A really big transformation under new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. But if Aller cannot go, and he's played very good ball this year, if he cannot go, Penn State has a more than capable backup to fill the role, a backup that absolutely can lead them to victory. Bo Pribula takes over, 18 for 23 this year, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, went 11 for 13 for 98 yards and a touchdown last week against Wisconsin after Aller went down, and showed some flashes of brilliance last year too, whether he was playing sparingly, whether he was playing in the bowl game. When Pribula was playing, he was putting up pretty decent numbers and playing well. The X factor for him, obviously, is his dual threat capability, something that Aller really doesn't have as much. Pribula's ability to run and extend plays and making the defense stay honest and account for his rushing ability is something that could give Ohio State some trouble on Saturday if, in fact, Pribula gets the start and does end up playing. He gives them that additional running threat, that additional X factor on offense, and that's a dangerous thing considering how good Penn State is at running the ball already. They've got Katron Allen. They've got Nick Singleton. Both those players have already rushed for over 480 yards this season, but the Nittany Lions need balance offensively on Saturday. If they want to beat Ohio State, they need this offense to be balanced. They cannot rely on Drew Aller or Bo Pribula, whoever it is, to solely win the game through the air, and they cannot rely on their running backs or even Pribula's legs to solely win it on the ground. They need that good mesh, that good mix of passing and running. They need that. If they are a one-dimensional offense, they are not going to be able to win this game. Why? Because Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country. The Buckeyes rank second in total defense, second overall, giving up just 254.4 yards per game. Only 163 passing yards per game, only 91.3 rushing yards per game. And again, it's kind of this double-edged sword, right? Or kind of something that you have to read between the lines a little bit. The Buckeyes are a very good defense. There's no doubt about that. They've put up phenomenal defensive numbers, but they haven't played anybody with the exception of Oregon. Again, Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa, none of those teams really scream juggernauts. Even Nebraska, not that great. They held them to 17 points, but probably should have lost that game, for being completely honest. So, outside of Oregon, Ohio State really hasn't played anybody. And in that Oregon game, they gave up nearly 500 yards of offense to the Ducks, 341 passing yards, 155 rushing yards. And again, that was at Oregon, a very hostile environment. Now they're having to go to Penn State, a very hostile environment, no doubt about that. The biggest key for Ohio State, more than anything, is shutting down the ground game. That's how they win this game, is making Penn State one-dimensional. Because while Penn State's offense has improved and while the passing attack has certainly improved as compared to last year, it's still not that great. Penn State is not an offensive team and not a team that's going to light you up through the air and have tons of big passing plays. And you can look at that strictly from the numbers. Penn State's top target is their tight end, Tyler Warren. He's playing great ball, over 500 reception yards this year. But you're not going to have your tight end go out and torch Ohio State in this game. It's just not going to happen. Their second top target, their top wide receiver, has 209 less reception yards than Tyler Warren and 25 less receptions. That's a problem. 22 receptions compared to 47 receptions for their tight end. Their wide receiver game isn't all that great. Do we really expect these wide receivers to go towards this Ohio State secondary here? Probably not, which is why if Ohio State sails out on the run and forces Penn State to try to win the game through the air, even if it is with a backup quarterback or even if it is with their starter in Drew Aller, the odds are going to be in Ohio State's favor. That's what they've got to do. Stop the run and force Penn State to air it out. That's how the Buckeyes can win this game. If you take a look at Penn State defensively, we know they're strong. Typically are, right, under James Franklin. They're fourth overall, giving up just 267 yards per game, only 174 passing yards per game, and like Ohio State, very strong against the run, giving up just 93.1 rushing yards per game. So like 2 yards difference in terms of the rushing yards allowed between the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions. One thing that I'm concerned with if I'm Penn State is their inability to create pressure. They've only mustered 14 sacks so far this year. Ohio State's only allowed 7. So even against some of their weaker opponents that they face, Penn State has not been able to generate pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They really haven't been able to force many turnovers either. Only 9 total turnovers on the year, 6 of those, though, being interceptions. And that's what they're going to need to do to win this game. Will Howard, as we mentioned, 17 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, takes very good care of the football. Can they find a way to force Ohio State into mistakes? If you look at that Oregon game, hostile environment, home crowd on Oregon's side, Ohio State had 2 fumbles on the day that led to 9 points for Oregon. Oregon, as we know, won that game by just 1 point. Completely changed the game with those 2 turnovers. So can Penn State find a way to force a handful of turnovers and then convert off of those to maybe change the outcome of this game? Can they find a way to rattle this Ohio State offense to where they go with a couple quick 3-and-outs, where they have a couple bad penalties, with a couple errant throws? What can Penn State's defense do to disrupt this Ohio State offense? Can they create pressure? Can they limit the big-time plays? That's a million-dollar question. The closest offense that Penn State has seen to Ohio State was probably USC's a few weeks ago. And they allowed 409 yards of offense to the Trojans, 220 through the air, 189 on the ground, allowed the Trojans to be extremely balanced in that game. And as we mentioned, Ohio State's got a pretty dang balanced offense themselves. Like Ohio State's recipe, Penn State's got to find a way to make the Buckeyes one-dimensional. The problem is, if you take away the run, Will Howard's playing really good ball. He's got 2 of the best wide receivers in the country at his disposal. That's something that Penn State doesn't have. If you stop the pass, they've got a double-headed monster in the backfield and Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson to lead the charge there as well, just like Penn State does, but Ohio State's offensive line playing very well also. So ultimately, guys, what's going to happen in this game? You know, it's first off, a tragedy, honestly. This is not a night game. It's a tragedy. I hate the big noon kickoff. I really do. This should be a night game, whiteout game for Penn State. That's what this should be. And unfortunately, we're getting to see an 11 a.m. kickoff. But regardless, we know Happy Valley is going to be decked out. We know they're going to be loud. This is one of the biggest games of the entire season, and they want to get over the hump bad in this game. 7 straight losses to the Buckeyes. Some of those losses are what ultimately kept Penn State out of the college football playoff most of the time. At least made it a little bit harder for them. Will that be the case again this year? Unfortunately, I'm going to say yes. I cannot pick Penn State to win this game until I actually see them do it. Ohio State is not scared of Happy Valley. Other teams are a little nervous coming into Happy Valley for a game like this. Ohio State's not. They're not fazed by it. They nearly beat Oregon in Eugene. They are not scared of Happy Valley at all. They've won there multiple times over these last few years. This is not something that phases this team at all. They've got Penn State's number. And until Penn State can prove, hey, we can beat you, why would I pick them to win this game? I do believe Ohio State's defense shows up big in this game. It shuts down Penn State's rushing attack, forcing whoever's under center to win the game through the air. I don't have a lot of faith in the pass-catching core for Penn State to deliver if the game is solely put on their shoulders. Ohio State's offense looks a lot better than what we saw last week against Nebraska. Give me the Buckeyes to win this game in Happy Valley. It will be close. It will be another one-possession game. Again, the last 7 meetings have been decided by an average of 8 points. It's really one possession. I expect a very similar result this year, but for the 8th straight year, Ohio State does beat Penn State. As much as I'd love to see the Nittany Lions pull off the upset and see some chaos in the college football world, I just don't think it's going to happen. But the one bright side, if you're Penn State, as heartbreaking as this loss would be, you're not out of the playoff race like you would be in other years. There's a 12-team playoff now. This would just be your first loss of the year. The schedule's very favorable going forward. So you can stay focused. You can still finish 11-1, and that absolutely would be good enough to get into the college football playoff. So with a loss here, the season is not over for Penn State. Keep your focus, but we're going to still side with the Buckeyes to keep their season alive, avoid their second loss of the year, and get a massive road win over Penn State for the 8th year in a row. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of those exclusive expert picks. some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years and currently doing so right now. So go sign up, join our team today, and start winning big with us today with our Week 10 picks just coming out this morning. So do not miss out on that. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.